My name is Joe Compton. I am an independent author and filmmaker and the executive producer here at Go Indie Now. I may know a lot of things, but that's because I never stop learning. I figured I wasn't alone in that. So I asked my friends and colleagues if they wouldn't mind giving us an hour of their time to each teach us something new. So, welcome to Indie Teachables 101, brought to you by the Speculative Fiction Academy.
Do you like fantasy, podcasting, and screenwriting? Want to learn how to write them? The Speculative Fiction Academy is perfect for you. With 5 curriculum tracks and 3 ways to learn, you'll go beyond the fundamentals to hone your craft. Take the classes you want to take. Visit SpeculativeFictionAcademy.com to learn more.
We're going to be welcoming my friend Leah Marks to join us. Leah is a project manager that specializes in online presence. And this week, we're going to be delving into SEO, which is better known as search engine optimization, the process of improving the quality and quantity of website traffic to a website or web page from search engines. SEO targets unpaid traffic rather than direct or paid traffic. So let's sit down and welcome the one and only Leah Marks. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Familiar face with me. I gotta go this way. I forget it. But she's here, and we're real excited for it. It's awesome. We got another great presentation for you. And I'm just gonna say right off the bat, I'm gonna apologize to everybody out there if I'm hard to understand or hear. Yes, I'm very nasally. I got attacked today by my sinuses, so I'm dripping and my eyes are watery. But luckily, Leah can just go forward and I don't have to worry too much about it because we've got a great presentation, as you can see here. It's all yours, my friend. Take it away.
Thanks. Yeah. I think that's a polite way of you saying I talk a lot, which is not untrue. Specifically about topics I find myself pretty passionate about.
Well, it's interesting stuff. So, you're not going to bore us. So that's going to be awesome. So.
That's good. My hope is that you'll walk away from this just knowing a little bit more about SEO and how to approach it. I have found in my 10 to 15 years of experience that one of the biggest obstacles to being successful or to approaching SEO successfully is people just don't understand it. So, and that's because there are a ton of different terms. There are a ton of different types of, I'll call it internet marketing or digital marketing. And SEO is just a small, tiny little portion of that. But everybody seems to call all digital marketing SEO. So we're gonna talk a little bit today about breaking some of those misconceptions, talking to you about how it works so that when you start making choices about what you want to do to increase your SEO presence or optimization, you know what decisions are the right one. You're not going to be confused. So that's my hope today, because let's just be honest, we could do a 6-week series on just this alone and still have, topics that we haven't touched. So let's start here. This is just a part of this process. When we're talking about SEO, when most people talk about SEO, there are all of these little components. You've got social media, SMS, email, website, PPC, which is pay-per-click, analytics, GMB, which is Google My Business, reputation management, branding. So all of these are just pieces in a puzzle that help you create a professional online presence. We are going to ignore most of these. So, we're not going to worry about all of this. We're going to just talk about clarifying how everything works. And then at the end, I'll give you some ways to get started on how to generate some effective SEO tactics for authors. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's start with this. What is it and what isn't it? So SEO is essentially the process of improving site placement on search engine results pages. These are also called SERPs. So I've had some people say, what in the heck is a SERP? And I have to explain it. It's, lazy tech talk. It's a search engine result page. It's basically the search page like Google and Bing. So how does it work? And we'll actually get into this a little bit more. So I'm just going to kind of just briefly cover this. It's just basically bots crawl all of the pages on the internet and create a library or an index. And the constantly changing algorithms, they are annoyingly changing. Every time you seem to have something figured out, they change. So marketers are constantly testing to figure out what signals and what triggers do what and how much weight are put on them. So that's really why SEOs charge a lot of money, because they have to do a crap ton of testing and experimentation. So basically, the algorithms analyze the page and then rank them based off of specific ranking factors. And we'll go into a little bit more about how that works later. The ones that we're going to focus on are on-site and off-site. What is it not? Okay. One, SEO cannot be developed overnight. It's not paid, but it is not free. So that's a tricky one. You can't pay for it. It's not pay-per-click, but you do have to dedicate time and money to make it happen, to make it, to build it. It is not a one-stop solution to marketing. So you can't just say, oh, I've got great SEO and then be done. You are not done. You are just scratching the surface of one component of internet marketing. And it's not the same as search engine marketing. So we're not even going to touch search engine marketing today, but it is very, very different than search engine marketing. It is essentially getting into this section, the section that's outlined in red of any SERP. This is a SERP, by the way, a search engine results page. So a SERP can be broken apart into a couple of different segments. We've got the organic search, which is what's highlighted or what's outlined here. We've got the local search over on the right-hand side. That little panel is actually called the knowledge panel. And we've got the sponsored search at the top. Those are the sponsored results, and that's pay-per-click. Those are paid for. So that's the SEO is basically just trying to get into the organic or unpaid search engine section. All right. Pay-per-click is online traffic driving model where people can run ads on search and social and pay a fee every time somebody clicks on the ad. So you don't actually say, here's $12, place my ad. You actually pay every time somebody clicks on that ad. So that's how that works. It is not a provider of permanent results. So it will display your listing for as long as you pay for it. But as soon as you pay for it, or as soon as you stop paying for it, you're off the page. So organic SEO is long-term. You build it, you don't have to pay for it, but it is very hard once you're on page one of Google to get off of page one. So it kind of sticks there. With pay-per-click, it's very easy to get on and very fast, but once you stop paying, you're done. So it is not a good strategy against competitors with big budgets. Not at all. So if you think you're going to get on page one of Google battling against Amazon, who's got $1 million marketing budget a year, you're going to be poor for a very, very long time. And you're probably going to be fighting a losing battle. So you really do have to, really pay attention to what kind of keywords you're trying to use. You're trying to get traction on. Let's see here. Okay. So as I mentioned before, the pay-per-click section is the sponsored section. This actually highlights just one. Normally it's three. So normally there are three sponsored listings at the top above the organic search. But this one only highlights one, so I don't know why. All right. Content marketing. So content marketing is not the same as content. It is the strategic use of content creation and distribution in order to reach your target audience and increase brand awareness and website traffic. All right. So basically, you can't just write a blog post and be done. That's just content. If you want to get into content marketing, you really have to pay attention to what kind of content you're creating. Are you strategically creating that content for somebody specific or for a specific audience? And then how are you getting it to them? Is it through social? Is it through a newsletter? Are you writing blogs? Are you guest blogging on other sites? So how are you distributing your content? All right. So back to SEO. All right. So those are just some of the little kind of smaller components of how SEO works. So let me kind of just break down how search works, because SEO is all about search engine optimization. So it's really important we understand how this all works. So let's break it down for you. All right. The website has millions and millions and millions of pages. So Google or Bing have to, and I have more experience with Google than with Bing, so there are some slight differences between the two, but they function fairly similarly. Fairly similar, that's a really horrible phrase. So they function very similar. Their ranking systems are basically designed to sort through those, I said millions and millions, it's actually billions and billions of web pages and content to try and present the most useful results possible. And it all starts with the search query. So basically, we type in a phrase, and Google, I'm going to say Google, but I mean Bing, but I will say Google. Google is trying to interpret the intent of that query. So for example, if I type in best epic fantasies of 2022, right? That's not an uncommon search. Google has to interpret what I'm looking for. Am I looking for a book or a movie? Am I looking for a name, a title, or a type, or a genre? It's trying to kind of figure out what it is I want, what it is I'm trying, because I'm not asking it in complete sentences. And there's a lot of different ways to interpret that specific search. So we have to go through and figure out, or Google actually uses what's called a language model. So they actually have this. So when I say replace, I really mean change. When I say change, I really mean exchange, right? So it has all of these language models to try and decipher what it is I'm trying to get to. Sorry,
Amazon gets this wrong so often. Like searching on Amazon's the worst.
Yeah. Google's great. Google's had quite a lot of time to figure it out. So they are probably by far the most sophisticated language models on the planet.
Yeah.
But that's what they do. So you type in a search query and they try to interpret your intent. All right. From there, they go to their entire index and they locate content containing the search query keywords. Now, this is where SEO becomes important. This is where it kind of ties in to how you can affect your ranking. It is looking for keywords matching the query. Do you guys get it? I'm hoping you do. So keywords in your content are going to become a very, very, very powerful tool.
So you want to put fantasy in there and words that are like very stark that are in the search.
I would say fantasy is not even good enough. Fantasy is such a broad range. Somebody who's interested in a fantasy, they might be epic, urban, dark. It just might be, you really want to narrow it down. Again, because you're not going to be able to rank for everything. So you really want to get as specific and granular as possible. And you really want to decide what keywords you want to rank for. And then we'll actually get into that a little bit later. So they find all of the content containing those keywords, and then they have to prioritize the content from the most valid sources. And what does that mean? Basically, what that means is after they identify relevant content, they want to prioritize the content that's going to seem like the most helpful, that's going to demonstrate expertise, that's going to be authoritative, that's going to be trustworthy. And they have several factors that they use in order to determine that. One of those factors, one of the biggest factors, is your site anywhere else on the internet? Are you mentioned? If other prominent websites are linking, and when I say prominent, I mean sites that also have good SEO and trustworthiness. If those good sites have links to your site on them, you actually are considered a quality website. So they are going to try and weed out, because they can't display every site that has those keywords. I mean, they could, but they're going to prioritize it. So page 1 through page 10, right? They're going to prioritize it based off of those specific signals. Okay. From there, they are going to prioritize accessible content. This usability, actually, it means more than just like, is it easy for a blind person to read? Is it black text on a white background? It's going to be, actually a really great way to do this is they have something called the Google Page Experience, and where they actually use a signal. They actually review your site and they give you a score. Essentially what it is, they give you a score on several different things that they care about. These are going to be things like core web vitals. How long does it take your site to load? How long until the user can start using your site? How quickly does the content load on your site? So you've got the site load, and then you've got the content on the site loading. So that's one aspect. Is it mobile friendly? Do you have Flash? Do you use the most recently updated code on your site? So all of those things are part of accessible content. So it's not just the look of it. My recommendation to anybody is, if they have a website, you can just type in Google Page Experience, and it will actually give you a rank. It's really easy. You just type in your URL, and it's going to give you like not only what your score is, but what can you do. It'll actually list things that you can do to help improve your page experience. All right. So that is one of the other things that it looks at. The last thing that it looks at is context. Now this element has nothing to do with you. This has everything to do with the searcher. So if I'm searching best epic fantasies of 2022, it's going to look at my search history. It's going to look at the pages that I've liked. It's going to look at the websites that I've been on, that I've stayed on. It's going to look at all of my data and try to interpret what I might be interested in. So these are the 5 main things that will happen from the time that somebody hits the search button to the time that the page results load. A lot is going on. So that is how search works. Feel free to jump in if you have any questions at all. Okay. So what can we do? How do we approach this? Because that's just a lot. You can't control everything. My recommendation is to start with on-page or on-site SEO and off-page or off-site SEO. And here are a couple of things that you can do. One is, let's just talk about on-page and on-site SEO first. The optimization of website content creation and distribution to improve your search engine results, page ranking, and generate organic traffic. That's basically just SEO. But it's the optimization of content. So this is decide what keywords you want your website to rank for. Do you want to rank for best epic fantasy or epic fantasy? Do you want to rank for fantasies? Do you want to rank for space opera? So you're going to choose probably your genre. You absolutely want to choose your name. So you want to rank for your name, which means you want to populate your name as much in your site as possible. That's enormously awkward. Every blog post, you're going to try and fit your name in. Trust me, you can do it. You can absolutely
even if
do it.
it's very common, even if it's like Joe Smith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because remember, it's looking at a number of different components, right?
Right.
And the keyword is just one.
Gotcha.
So if I am looking for an author and I want to find Joe Smith, the author, right? Am I going to look up Joe Smith author? Am I going to look up Joe Smith fantasy author? Am I going to look up Joe Smith? And then if I have a book series, am I going to look up the name of the series? And that's another thing. If you have a series that you really want to promote, get the name of that series on your page content. I mean, everywhere.
Well, hopefully you know Joe Smith, because there's probably 65 fantasy authors named Joe Smith, but
I think there's more than that.
Right, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So series name, add your name. So, and let's just be clear, because there's a comment there that says just add it to the keywords. You can no longer use meta tag or meta keywords on your site. That was a fantastic strategy up until about 2001. No, I'm serious.
No, I got you. It's just funny. Sorry.
Yeah, it's been a while. So what happened was that the metadata was actually a fantastic tool that that Google started to use to help people so people could help Google see what they were about. Like I could tell you what my site was about. And it was a fantastic tool. And then marketers, not me personally, but my people, we started to use that. We started to use those keywords, that metadata to try and get our clients higher and higher ranking, right? And the more shady marketing and the more shady SEO professionals were using the metadata to kind of work the system.
Yeah.
So what happened is Google actually decided that it will still use metadata, but instead of a 9 or a 10 weight in terms of validity, it now has a 1 or a 2 weight. So metadata is still a good thing to have if you want to use your meta keywords. And for those who aren't familiar with meta keywords, if you're on a website let's say like I almost said YouTube, WordPress or Wix, they give you a little field where you can say, it says, what are your keywords? And you can type in your keywords. It's still a good thing to do because it's just one of 100, one of like 500 signals that the analyzers or the Google crawlers are looking at, but it's such a small one. If you rely on that alone, it's not going to be as effective. You have to get it in your page content. That's why you can't have nice things, right? Blame marketers. Really, they are the plague on the internet.
It also affirms to me how antiquated Goodreads is, because I can like when I post a video to Goodreads, I put the keyword tags in there, and I get a lot of hits from the keyword tags because I know what I'm searching for, and they kind of use that as their primer for videos, right, especially.
So remember that their keywords are, so that might be something different. That's their search keywords,
right?
That's a little different than Google keywords or on-site keywords.
I'm just pointing out that Goodreads is 500 years behind everybody else. So I'm making a bad joke there, I guess.
No, absolutely. Keywords are still valuable, but you absolutely do not want to rely on that. You want to get your keywords in the body of the content. And when I say in the body of the content, I mean, if you have 500 words, your keyword should be in there probably at least 7 times. That is how much it should be in there on every single page. So if you want to try and find ways to include epic fantasy in every fourth paragraph, it's really what you want to do. And remember, this is because you're really trying to push really hard for on-page or on-site SEO.
Yeah.
You do not have to have the same keyword on every page. For example, you might have an author website and you have maybe an epic fantasy series and maybe a space opera series, right? You really do want to make sure that the keywords that you are including on your site do match the content of the specific page. So if you're on a page that's talking about your space opera, you probably don't want to have epic fantasy keywords in the content. That's just going to be confusing, right? And that's more about the users than it is about the crawlers, right? You do want your website to make sense because, again, SEO is just trying to get the right users to your page. You don't want to confuse the users who are already on your page in an effort to get more users to your page. Does that make sense? So absolutely focus on making sure that you have content in there, but that you're not making a mess of your site in the meantime. All right. So that is the first step that you want to do to generate some on-page or on-site SEO. The next thing is off-page or off-site SEO. This is essentially the validation of your website from other reliable websites or platforms. This is also called link building. It's called backlinking. This has also existed since the dawn of time in internet marketing world. But it actually is still an incredibly effective tool. There's nothing to beat it, right? In terms of off-site or off-page SEO. This is essentially SEO that happens off of your site. That's why they call it off-site SEO. It's a very original term. So this is essentially think of it this way. On-site SEO is you bragging about yourself. Off-site SEO is people bragging about you, right? And what you want to do is you want to get your site mentioned, your books mentioned, links to your site or to your shop if you have an e-commerce site that actually allows you to people to purchase books from your site. Even if you don't have an e-commerce site and you have a books on your site and the purchase link is the Amazon purchase link, that may be the case, but you really want to drive traffic to your website. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to build citations. So Amazon's good, Goodreads is great. One thing that I didn't put on there that I absolutely should have is other author pages. I mean, we have this incredible network of people in the industry, and it's very easy for them to make recommends, right? It's something that I have not seen at all. And it would be such a great tool for people to use because it's one of those, you scratch your back or you scratch my back, I scratch yours, right? If you put your link, my link on your site, I'll put your link on my site. And it's a really great strategy that most authors can actually participate. I think it's easier for authors to do it than it is for other industries.
Go ahead. Well, I was going to ask a question, but go ahead. Keep going.
No, please ask a question. I've been talking. I need to take a drink.
So I'm curious about sharing posts. How offsite does that affect? Does that affect anything with SEO? If I was to share a mention of myself in a post off Facebook or Twitter or something to that effect, if I posted something and somebody shared it to their page, or even if it would be probably more effective if they put it on their website, right? That would probably be where it would come into handy.
Yeah, no, actually that's a great question. It's not just other people's websites. It's other people's platforms as well. So Facebook is still an internet platform. Twitter is a social media network, but it is also a website platform. I'm sorry, an internet platform. YouTube, all of the social media. So it is just as valid for you to get reposted or get linked off of other people's profiles, as long, and this is where people tend to fall short, as long as that post includes a link back to your website. You are trying to drive traffic there. I would say, I think if I'm going to put a number to it, I would say at least 75% of the reposts fail to do that. And it's a huge missed opportunity. So, absolutely. Social media platforms, great. Name and link, not just the name, not just the link, but name and link. And that's going to really help you. So citation pages are also, are fantastic. A citation is essentially a listing on any directory. Any directory. So Goodreads is essentially a directory, right? Libraries usually have directories. So any way that you can, and I'm sure there's tons more. I don't know of any specific ones out in the kind
Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Noble
would be one. Kobo, places like that.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So getting if you have control over being able to add your listing to those directories, you absolutely 100% should. 100%.
How about Patreon and paywalls? Are paywalls considered not essential directories because you have to pay for it and people have to pay to be there? Is that because Patreon would be another directory if your name is there and your website is there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Whether it's paid or not paid, it doesn't really have any bearing on it. I would say that, I think other than Yelp, I would say most of the citations that I've seen across all industries are paid.
Cool.
Other than like yellow pages and white pages, that's also another type of directory, although that's a business directory. So, but again, that's going to be great. But if you do that, as well as getting other authors to mention or recommend your book on their website, that's going to be a huge plus for your off-page and offsite SEO. And most people think that offsite SEO is the hardest, and they're not wrong. It is the hardest because it's always awkward to ask, hey, can you post my website on your site? Thank you so much. Here's $5. It is awkward, but I have found that most of the author groups have been so hugely supportive of each other. And I think that authors would have a ton of success, more so than any other industry. Yeah. I think that's just a kind of a plus.
Yeah, for sure.
I saw a question come up. I didn't see this.
Oh, no, it was just a comment. Okay. There are directories of bloggers and reviewers that some organizations have created. And then Anita also said, I see a lot of authors I interview, they don't list their websites. So.
Yeah. It's a huge missed opportunity. So that is essentially the basics. If you haven't done these two things yet, let me just go back. Keyword optimization for on-site SEO, and off-site SEO, getting your site, your series, your book posted in other places outside of your site. If you haven't started that, these are some really easy ways to get going. And I think that anybody who is, whether you are brand new starting out or you are an experienced author, you should have an easy time of kind of getting started. If you don't have a website, well, watch last week's show.
For sure. I have another question based on this. If somebody was to do like an interview with you put on their website your book cover, but attach that to an active link that goes to either your website or Amazon or whatever, would that trigger SEO as well?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
So if they do an image, like a lot of times you can take images off of Amazon because a lot of them are affiliate marketers. So they take the image and they put it on their website so that if you click on it, they get paid a little bit of money for you
Mm-hmm.
clicking on it and purchasing the book from that link. So they don't put the link per se there. What they put is just an image, and it has the link inside of it when you click on it, but it doesn't list it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So one of the ways that I would recommend people approach that is, and again, affiliate marketing is a whole other ballgame. But if the affiliate has the option within their tracking platform to create an image tag. So within Google, within any website, you can actually title the name of the image, right? If you can put the name, if you can put at least your name and your domain, maybe not a link, but maybe, joecompton.com, in the title tag, it at least give you some of that. It's not the full shebang, but it's something. Title tags are also something that Google looks at a lot. So, and that's another thing.
Now I have to go back on my blog and retitle all of those now, because I have like 120 reviews, and I never thought the title thing was that important. So now I know I have to go and title.
I mean, it's one of the 100 signals that crawlers look at. There's no one thing that you can do, and that's unfortunate, but it is just the nature of it. There's no one thing that you can do to get SEO. There are 100 little things. So no one thing is incredibly important. But if you add it all up, if something has got the weight of 1 and something else has got the weight of 1, and you do 100, you've got 100 points there, right? So the image alt tags. So do keywords in image alt tags count toward SEO? Absolutely, yes. Yes, 100% yes. So not only that, but it's also an accessibility factor too. So that's critical for, I wouldn't say critical, it's important for many reasons. The SEO factor, but also the accessibility for people who are vision impaired.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions?
Not yet.
Not yet. That's actually the end of my slides. Okay. But I can still talk about. I kind of went through that faster than I wanted to.
Sorry.
No, it's one of those things that I'm pretty excited about. Again, the misconception of what SEO is the kind of the starting factor for, I guess, the biggest factor for failure with SEO. Now, I do recommend that you don't prioritize SEO over social media marketing. I just don't, or your website development. You really if you're gonna do digital marketing or internet marketing, and keep in mind, my experience is internet marketing and brand development for small businesses, which is essentially what every author is, right? A small business.
Yeah, for sure.
You really want to focus on 2 components: 1, brand awareness, and 2, traffic driving. So I guess traffic driving and conversion are really those 2 together. So you want people to recognize who you are and what you do, and you want them to come to your site and interact with your website. Your website should be the hub of everything that you do. So the purpose of SEO is to get people to come to your site, right?
Yeah.
So you're trying to get your site on page 1 of Google. That's what SEO is. But there are a lot of different ways to drive traffic to your website. SEO is just one of many. Search engine optimization is very, very saturated. It's very hard to do, and it takes a long time. It's much easier to do it through social media marketing. So this is important, but I wouldn't say sacrifice your social media efforts to do this. I would say make sure you have a professional presence online, and make sure that your website is working.
Yeah, most of my stuff is on the first page simply because I utilize the social media aspect of it. Facebook, YouTube, all of those things rank high for Google because they're verifiable. So, right. So,
and let me tell you what's killing it right now. TikTok.
Yeah.
TikTok is just, I mean, it's so easy to get traffic from TikTok. I mean, it's just so easy. Right now, it's probably the top, I would say the top social media platform for traffic driving.
Nice. So Anita has a question. It looks like a 2-point question. She says, for SEO, are niche words better than broader terms? And if so, how niche should you go?
So let's stick with my epic fantasy keyword, right? So you've got fantasy is very, very broad. Epic fantasy is less broad. Secondary world, third person epic fantasy, probably a little bit too niche.
Yeah.
You know, you go. So you could probably stick with the genres.
Although would
and subgenres. Go ahead.
Would it work opposite, because there's not a lot of first person epic fantasy. So if you have a first person epic fantasy, if you were to do first person epic fantasy, you would probably score with that, right? Because there's not a lot of it.
Well, remember, when it comes to SEO, it's all based off of this little thing right here.
Right.
What
so somebody's looking for first person epic fantasy.
How many people? Yeah, you'll rank first for first person epic fantasy, but if only 5 people are searching for that, you're not getting the bang for your buck, right?
True.
You have to pay attention.
Which is about how many people would actually search for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that you could do is try to recall how you search for books, what keywords you type in. I always find it fun to challenge a family member or friend to find me, online. Search for me, nice. Find me. Like, what would you do if you wanted to do this? So it all comes down to knowing what keyword query people are going to use in their search, because everything follows that. Whether your site gets selected under the relevance, whether your site is weeded out because of content, you really need to start with this foundation here, right?
Yeah, Vanessa says there's also something to be said for using keywords that readers use rather than what writers might use. I was just thinking that not a lot of readers know what secondary world is.
Right. Which is why I used it for the most ridiculous example. But if I were gonna get that granular from a reader side, maybe, let's think for a second. Urban fantasy with vampires would be an acceptable keyword.
Yeah.
Because people do search for those specific elements, right?
So that brings up another question that I have, which is, because we're taught as authors, especially if we're pitching our stuff, to do like comparisons, right? And to do comparison shopping. Basically, my book is like, my book is like Twilight meets Lord of the Rings, right? And so if someone were to search for books like Twilight, how would you search optimize that kind of idea?
I wouldn't. Books like Twilight, I have not found that to be a popular search term.
Well,
books like anything. I mean, people don't really look for books like. They don't look for those comparisons. They'll look for vampire romance. Is that what the genre is? Vampire romance.
Shitty writing. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Urban fantasy vampires would get you a lot of results. And let's just remember, you're trying to get as granular as possible for 2 reasons. One, it's going to be easy to rank. The more granular you get, it's going to be easier to rank for urban fantasy with vampires than it is to rank for for fantasy, right? Because you're not competing as much. It's not as saturated. But 2, you're going to be getting the people who are actually interested in your book. If if you have an urban fantasy with vampires and your search term is urban fantasy with vampires, people aren't going to be searching for urban fantasy with vampires if they're looking for Lord of the Rings. They're just not. So you've got that it's called that intentive click. You really want to try and match what you think that your reader is going to be looking for.
How spread apart should the wording be? So if you're doing urban fantasy with vampires on the website, how many should it all be on the first page? Should it be in several of your pages on your website? Should it be in one paragraph at a time? How detailed would the actual putting of those words into the website need to get for it to hit like that?
So it is going to depend, I would say, again, so that's a very broad question. If you've got an author website and you've got different types of books on your site that you want to promote, you really want to have heavy keyword density. That's what they call it, keyword density, on every single page. But you do want to make sure that, again, that the keyword on that specific page is matching the content on the page.
Right.
So again, if you have a blog post about your latest space opera, don't mention your urban fantasy with vampires keyword. You don't need to do that, right? I see a comment from Vanessa that says, I don't know, there are apps that are specifically about what's like X. I wonder if there actually is more interested in that sort of thing. Let me tell you, there is, but it's not a search term. That's why they have apps, because with search, it's not a strong search term. There's not anything in the language model that approaches that for Google. So that's why there's apps that are like that. And there are a lot of websites, I've seen a couple of websites that promote books of a specific genre that are, search for these specific criteria. Do you want a paranormal? Do you want dark? Do you want, and I think now I've actually seen, like, does this have trigger warnings? Like, you can filter out anything with a trigger warning or whatever it may be. Vanessa's question, is there a point where you have too many instances of keywords in your content? That is a fantastic question. That's such a good question. Yes, it is possible to have too many keywords. The Google bots actually are, the Google crawlers are actually a language module, or a language, I've forgotten the phrase now. There's a language tool. Language model. That's the word I was looking for. They actually do understand English. So if you're keyword heavy, but it disrupts the flow of content on your site, then you've got too many keywords. So if I say, the latest urban fantasy with vampires, about this vampire in this urban fantasy with this fantasy world in an urban setting, like, if I had a sentence like that, one, horrible writing, but two, that's not great content. That's not quality content. And Google will be able to see that. Their crawlers are pretty sophisticated like that. So you don't want to do that. There are interesting ways. And as writers, I'm hoping it'll be fairly simple to come up with creative ways to insert urban fantasy and vampires in the context in a organic and seamless way.
Sure. It's all very yes, very much so.
Yeah, legit sites that do that, they're probably trying to check all of the boxes. Or that, and they're probably still working off of the metadata. So they're using metadata, which again is not as strong as it used to be, but they're just trying to, again, if I'm a marketer and I'm a website provider and I'm promising my client that he's going to get on Google, on page 1 of Google, I'm going to try and do every possible thing that I think the algorithm is looking for, right? All 100 things.
And
so
remember, as you mentioned earlier, it changes on a dime. So what you do now you can't just stick it and let it sit there forever. It'll change.
Yeah, that's true. Dynamic content's strong, but one of the things that Google has not strayed from since I've started this is the emphasis on content, strong content and helpful content. Everything that they do to their algorithm It's in an attempt to try and make the search more effective, right, for the users. So keyword stuffing it's risky. It's still very, very risky because, again, if you get caught, it's really hard to get off of Google's shit list.
Yeah,
really hard. So everyone has their own risk profile, so they can do it and they can try it, but if they do and they get caught, it's
does that apply to people who do pay for clicks and things like that too? Does Google account those kind of things as well?
Pay per click?
Pay for click or pay for likes or pay for engagement kind of idea.
Well, so pay-per-click is a valid search, a valid marketing tool. Absolutely, 100% it is. So Google actually, within its platform, will give you the means to generate a pay-per-click campaign, right? Mm-hmm. It is essentially an ad campaign. You're trying to get your listing on page 1, and anytime somebody clicks, you get money and Google gets money. So, or you get the lead and Google gets money. So Google's not going to penalize you for it. It's if you, I guess if you,
even if it's empty content.
Well, if it's empty content, then okay. So
because you paid for it, so it's kind of
you pay for the click. So you don't pay for the lead, and there are pay-per-lead campaigns. It's CPL. That's a CPL campaign.
Which is that's how YouTube does their thing, is pay per lead kind of. Well, they have clicks too.
They also have PPV, which is pay per view. So some will charge you if somebody clicks the play button. Some will charge you if the viewer gets past a certain minute and seconds in the video. So there are, again, these campaigns are for ads or for listings, and there are valid ways. But the thing of it is that you just have to be aware of the rules. The leads, those platforms and those campaign, there are very specific regulations associated with that. Most of them are fairly new, since 2017, to try and protect people's privacy. Facebook got hit hard legally in 2017 and made some very specific changes to their platform to protect privacy. And a lot of the other platforms kind of followed suit. So you just need to make sure that if you are doing any kind of a campaign through social media platform, like pay-per-click, you do want to make sure that you're following the rules.
Cool. Awesome. Any other questions, anybody? I mean, what's the one thing you think authors should be doing? Is it concentrate for social media purposes? Because you said social media is more valuable than SEO at this point.
I would say not necessarily more valuable as much as
more viable,
easier to succeed with.
Yeah.
Less saturated.
So sorry, I have the allergy brain, so I apologize. But I meant viable. But we always talk about how concentrated, as social media, because you want to be social on social media, right? So for people who do one or two social medias, is it spreading yourself? Should you be spreading yourself out a little bit more, or is it just focus on the content on one platform that will help you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are a couple of questions that each person needs to answer before making that decision. One, anytime that you approach adding a new platform, a new social media platform to your marketing efforts, you need to make sure that it's sustainable, right? You need to say, I can do whatever it is I do. If I do once a week or once a day, I need to make sure that I can sustain that for 6 months to a year easily, right? Your social marketing efforts aren't going to be that effective up until the 6 months to a year part. And the 6 months to a year, I know that's a broad range of time, but it really does depend on what you're trying to do. Are you trying to generate leads? Is your objective brand awareness? Are you trying to just get your name out there and to build up some recognition? So what is it that you're trying to do? So you really do want to have something that's sustainable. Secondly, you need to make sure that the platform that you're choosing is the one that has your audience. So if your readers are, in their 40s and 50s, TikTok might not be the place.
Yeah.
So and Instagram either. It's just not a valuable place. You want to stick with Facebook and maybe Twitter. If you are trying to get that young audience, TikTok is absolutely the place you want to go. So you really need to just make that decision strategically.
YouTube too.
YouTube, I think, is
middle
28 to 43.
Yeah.
I might be outdated on that. 20 to 43.
That's about right. Yeah.
So, you just want to pay.
That's
attention.
where I've had the most success. Target marketing is that age range. So.
Well, and additionally, you need to make, again, it's sustainable. Is it sustainable for you to do, as an author, to do a video once a week to twice to 3 times a week for 6 months to a year?
Content is key. Right?
Content is key. So YouTube is video content. Video content can for some people be harder, or at least more intimidating to make. So if you have a hard time sustaining that, if you think you might not, then maybe dabble, but don't build a strategy and try to execute a sustainable strategy off of that.
Nice. Awesome. Well, this has been fantastic. Is there anything else you want to mention real quickly? Again, if people want to get in touch with you, go to your Facebook and message you there and talk to you there, right? That's how you still want people to engage with you. If they want people to engage with you.
Absolutely. Facebook, email. Again, people are more than willing to email me. But yeah, I am on Facebook almost daily. It's kind of the nature of my business.
All right, you got a second chance. Do you want to do it this time? Do you remember the magic words?
Oh my gosh. No, I don't.
It's always time to go indie now.
It's always time to go indie now.